Before today's video starts, I want to mention that according to YouTube statistics, only about 23% of all the people that watch my videos are actually subscribed. If you end up liking today's video, please consider subscribing. After all, it's free, and you can always change your mind and enjoy the video. I have a Patreon now. It's down there in the description. There are quite a few tiers. Go check it out. It will help me out a lot if you decide to support me. On to the video then. So hello you beautiful people, how are you all doing? So you might notice that I'm currently inside of a totally different environment. This is in fact ubuntu-linux. This is not Debian or anything like that. This is just pure Ubuntu that I'm running here. I'm running Ubuntu, running on the kernel version 5.4.0 -47-generic. So that's what I'm using on my main workstation. It's still the same workstation as I used to use. We can go into the about section here and show you guys that it is the same workstation I used to use. The only difference is that I'm using Ubuntu now, and I want to show you guys how easy it is to set up a the dev environment inside of Ubuntu compared to all the other distributions I've used. So to just show you what's going on and stuff. I'll be still using Linux. I will not be switching to Windows anytime soon. I just want to show how easy it is to set up everything as you need to. So first up, to set up a clean environment, you obviously have to get rid of all the unnecessary stuff that you're not going to use. So for me, I picked a full-blown installation of Ubuntu on my workstation, and what I did was I went to the Ubuntu Software Center, and I went into the install tab right here, and I removed all the games that come pre-installed, and I also removed Thunderbird and Firefox. You can remove those just by typing in a simple command, and you do not have to do it like this, which is what I did. I just went in here and removed them manually through the GUI, which is what you can do. It's fine, it works just fine, so I used that instead, and it works really well. So next up, we're going to install timeshift for our backups. Now the reason why you need backups is that timeshift, unlike all the other tools that I've used in the past, isn't buggy. And it's directly from the repository. Pretty much everything here is from the repository itself. Also, one more thing I should mention, you should have updated and upgraded your entire system. I did an update of all the package lists, but I didn't do a system upgrade yet. I will do it right after this video. So what you have to do is type in sudo apt-update, and it will update all the package lists inside of your distribution. I already installed my web browser of choice, which I'll go into in a minute. So yeah, as you can see, I have 129 packages left, so it's still better than Arch, honestly. I'll soon make a video on why you should consider using Ubuntu and why it's my preferred distribution now and why I like it. Anyway, so that's timeshift installed, or we can now search for it like so. Timeshift, it will ask me for my password, so I'm going to type that in real quick. There we go. It's going to ask me which one I want. I will use rsync. It's estimating the system size, so that takes a while. Again, you need to go to the setup wizard on your own. So you have to set it up, and you can, it shows you how much space you have available and how many snapshots you have. But it's up to you. You have to configure it yourself, and I'm gonna show you how. But if you have this window, you can click the wizard and you can configure it from here, but it's up to you. So that's timeshift for backups. I'm not gonna configure it now since I don't have a spare hard drive to do so, but once I do find one, I will definitely set up a backup of my OS and my files separately. Next, we're going to install some tools and compilers. So for that, you're going to go into the description where all the tools are written out. For example, the tools that we're installing are tools for writing code, and well, some of them are just video players, some of them are encoders, some of them are graphical editors, some of them are just simple and really cool utilities. I'm also installing build essentials along with some other useful tools. For example, Alien is a utility you can use to convert rpm packages to deb packages, therefore making it really easy to install on your Ubuntu system. So that's why I installed it. The apt-transport-https thing is for the repository stuff, so it works properly. Audacity is for recording audio for all my voiceovers that I started doing lately. Docker is for containerizing operating systems. Libjpeg is for cleaning up my system from all the junk that will be collected over time. VLC is a simple media player, same goes for MPV, even though VLC is far more powerful, so that's why I install VLC as well. GIMP and Krita are my preferred graphical editors of choice. For some things I'll use GIMP, for some things I'll use Krita, but I seem to be using GIMP a lot more than Krita. Again, it depends on the thing that I'm doing. Node.js is really useful if you want to create some sort of a simple web server inside of Node.js. I recently had to do that for for testing purposes. Python 3 dev is for the Python 3 development packages, so you can work with Python 3. Pretty much most of these are just for Python itself, and Python is a really powerful language. If you're using Ubuntu, you should have Python installed, but I'm going to try and install it like this because it's easier for me to just copy and paste it in. If I haven't mentioned VirtualBox is for virtual machines, which I absolutely love working with. You have actually seen me use a lot of virtual machines lately. I'll soon make a video about why you should consider creating virtual machines as well. LibreOffice, if you haven't watched my recent video about why you should use LibreOffice, go ahead and watch it. I won't repeat myself here, but basically it's a really cool, solid office suite that I use and it's fun to use. ubuntu-make is another utility that is used for code and for compiling. Vim is a terminal text editor. It's really powerful if you know how to work with it. FileZilla is just a FTP file browser. You can use it to browse through the files on a web server, which makes it really easy to just dump footage to and take footage from. Git is obviously a utility for cloning, merging, and pushing commits to your GitHub repositories or somebody else's. Tmux is a terminal multiplexer. I've been recently using it a lot since I don't want to have multiple terminal windows open. I can just use tmux to have like 2 instances of my terminal instead of 1 window, which is really useful. Gawk, I installed this one because I want to have awk installed. Because for some things you can use grep, for some things you can use awk. Pretty much what they do is they simplify the output of the given command, so you don't have to search through all the files and things that it dumps into your terminal window. What else? Fakeroot is for a fakeroot environment, which is useful if you want to do some testing of a piece of software so it doesn't corrupt your root environment. Automake and autoconf are a few other utilities for automating configuration and compiling. Mono-devel is a set of utilities that enables us to work with C# code under Linux. Build Essentials is basically a toolbox for developers. If you're just starting out as a developer and want to learn things, to write simple pieces of code and compile them, you can definitely use just Build Essential and will install all the tools that you will need. GCC is a C++ compiler, so that's why I installed that. And these OpenJDK things are just for installing Java, because Java is, believe it or not, used for some games or utilities even. So that's that. If I haven't mentioned Kdenlive, that's the editor of choice that I use. I really love it. It's a really cool video editor. It's actually really powerful. If you know how to work with it, you can make some really stunning videos. Then again, I'm not a professional with it, but I get some really decent content out of it. In fact, this very video you're watching has been edited and rendered using Kdenlive. It's a free piece of software. You do not have to pay for it whatsoever, which is really, really cool. You might notice these other libdev packages here. These are library packages, specifically the development versions of these packages, because you do not need them necessarily, but I like using them because it's much easier for me to use. Because there's another one over here, for example, Pretty much what they, and another one here. Basically all of these are used for writing, are basically library files that will let you compile or pretty much any single piece of code you might come across. But if it's something written in Rust or Ruby, you might want to install specific compilers for those. This tutorial is just for my specific environment and what I'm using and what I'm planning on using over here on my system. So if you have any recommendations or suggestions, make sure to let me know. I'll be really pleased to know about your suggestions, and also mention why you are suggesting those and what the use cases for these are, because I'm looking for new tools and utilities to expand upon my already fairly decent and pretty complex knowledge of Linux and writing code under Linux. So I would like to know what you guys are using, what your rationale behind your utilities are, and why you would recommend them to me. Possibly even show some examples if you can, but if you can't, that's fine. Your reasoning should be more than sufficient. And we're back. So now that all these applications have been installed, we need to next install MariaDB, both the server and the client, even though I would recommend just to install the client. But the server is useful for a number of things. So for example, you can then set up something like phpMyAdmin on your machine to test out logging information for your database in a company, which makes it extremely useful because having a database server set up will enable you to create all kinds of applications, which makes it something really worthwhile, because a lot of sites that you're visiting nowadays have some sort of database in them. Even though my website doesn't have a database, at least as of now. So that should be a MariaDB server installed. So next we have to somehow integrate our database with PHP so we can log into our database and add people to the tables and such, so that we can actually register users. That's where PHP comes into play. PHP is used for creating login forms or to create a landing page for registering users, and these users get both their username and password stored in some sort of a database, so that if they log in, they can the server can go check hey, this user named Carl, his password is 1234, does it check out with his password 1234? It does, log him in. If it doesn't, don't log him in. That's a really basic explanation of how it works, but that's what it does. It sends out requests and checks if it actually checks out with the login information. Right, so with PHP installed, we can next install Meld. Now Meld is a utility that basically shows you differences between two or more files that you open. They have opened at the same time. It's really useful if you just want to compare your file or your version of the file with somebody else's, so it makes it much easier to determine what the changes are, what changes were made. It's kind of like looking at the commit history in your GitHub repository and seeing all the added lines in green and all the removed lines in red. It makes it much easier to know, hey, this entire section was changed to this, or this one line was changed to this line or to these lines. Simply put, it makes it much easier to diagnose certain things, which makes it a really powerful utility, especially for programmers and developers, so that you can, discuss the changes, was it worth implementing like this? Wouldn't it be better to implement like this? That's kind of the rationale when it comes to these things, because when you're writing code, you want to see the differences, what have people changed, what was their reasoning behind it, what was their thinking for changing a certain thing. Is it in line with your beliefs and with your ideal way of thinking? Is it a way that people would consider understandable? Does it make sense? Is it a usable thing? Is it good enough? Simply put, it enables us to check two files side by side, seeing the differences on each and every line if there are any. If there are some differences, we can compare them, see if it was better to use the older version or the same or the new version that has been implemented. If it's worth it, we can keep it. If it's not, we don't even have to do it. Before this is installing, I already installed my Brave browser. You guys might want to install it. It's basically a really secure web browser that I use. It has an integrated ad blocker. It has its own way of like generating some sort of a cryptocurrency. You can create a local wallet in your Brave browser, and you can then use these let's say the currency that you make by visiting certain websites or just by seeing some. Well, you won't be able to see ads, but the ads that you will see in the Brave will block, it will actually generate a bit of cryptocurrency for you to use later, so you can donate it to the people that you want to, see grow. For example, I am a certified creator on Brave, so it's really cool for me. So if you are using Brave and have some of your currency left over, it would mean a lot to me. But again, it's up to you. I'm not forcing anybody. Alright, so I did mention that I installed the browser that I use called Brave, but I didn't mention like what these commands do. So what this one does, it pretty much adds a key that will be used to pretty much like unlock the connection to the repository. And a repository is a place where you can download additional software. It's kind of like a download center where you can pretty much get almost any kind of software for your Linux distribution. If there is a piece of software that you want, check if there is a repository for it so you can install it directly from your package manager. If it's not there, you can use different methods, which I will mention like in a few seconds. But pretty much what these two commands do, they add a repository and a key. The first one adds a key which is used to unlock the repository so you can get access to that piece of software. Next we have this line here. What it does, it creates a list file inside of the sources.list directory, which is something that Ubuntu uses to manage all the apt lists. And the apt list is like a list of sources for those packages that apt uses to gain access to all those packages. But in order to use it, once you run these two commands, you have to update the package list. To do that, you have to run sudo apt-update. What this will do, it will update the list of packages available for your distribution. And then you can use your package manager to install, for example, the Brave browser in this case, which is what I did already. I already installed it. Another method of installing software on Linux is by using deb packages, which I'll be using in this method. So I'll just copy this line and explain what it does. So this line does right now, it's downloading a file from this link. If you can guess that, it's a link to a deb file from Google itself for Google Chrome. A deb file is kind of like a package that you can install for your distribution. It can be used on Debian-based distributions like Ubuntu, Xubuntu, Kubuntu, or Pop! OS. Pop! OS is a OS from System76 based on Ubuntu. It's a bit more refined and more geared towards gamers and enthusiasts, but I like the original Ubuntu better. Then in order to install it, we're going to use a command called dpkg. Now, dpkg is a command that will let you install deb packages. So it's like a Debian package manager essentially. As you can see, it's preparing to unpack it. It's unpacking Google Chrome stable, which is the name of the package. It's version 85. It's setting it up. It's processing, and it's been set to provide Google Chrome. In auto mode, what this is, it's updating the relevant commands for a command that was already in that system. So if you want to use Google Chrome, you can type it in like this, or just type in Google Chrome, or you can use Google Chrome -stable. If you're wondering how I'm getting the tab completion, you just press tab twice or once and it will auto-complete. So that's Chrome. Chromium is actually easier to install than you think. Nowadays, Chromium is actually installed using the Snap Store or Snap Package Manager. Snaps are another way of installing software under Ubuntu. Now, a lot of people swear by snaps, saying that they are bloated, that you shouldn't use them. Now, I agree mostly, but there's also a reason for them existing. It makes the installation of software much easier without any hassle, which you will see in the later examples. So right now we're installing Chromium, which shouldn't take that long. Now, what snaps are essentially another method of getting software, as I mentioned. You can use the Snap Store or Snapcraft or just regular Snap command, which is available in your distribution. For example, snaps are mostly known to be inside of Ubuntu, which is the distribution I'm using right now. And I was originally against the idea of snaps, but after doing some testing inside of a virtual machine and toying around with it, there are specific flags which make it a lot less of a bloat and a lot more like using the out package manager, which is the default for many Debian based distributions, which Ubuntu is one of them. In order to get the functionality of apt using snaps, I'm using these terms loosely by the way, is by using a specific flag, which I'll mention with these next few commands. So right now it's mounting the snap and installing it, which is fine. One of the main actually selling points of using snaps is that they are more secure, because the way that they are run is inside of a container. So if a app were to be infected with some sort of a virus or malicious code, it won't contaminate your entire operating system, it will just contaminate that one app. Each app has its own container, so in case there is any issue or any potential of a virus outbreak, it will only affect that one app, so it's a major improvement in security. Now, as I mentioned, you can install snaps so that they behave like they are just installed using the regular apt package manager. So they are not containerized, they have full access to the hardware and are not slowed down by any containers whatsoever. This can be done by using the --classic command. Now what I have here is a AWS CLI client. AWS is basically a Amazon Web Services client for your command line. And if you don't know what those are basically services provided by Amazon, which a lot of developers use, especially in the enterprise space. And that's pretty much all you have to know about it. You can Google about it or search about it online, but the basic definition of this is it's a client that will let you access and use Amazon Web Services, which are really powerful and used a lot in the enterprise space. Alright, there we go. As you can see, it's been installed from the Amazon Web Services. This is basically letting you know from which company it's provided by. So you can see it's provided by Amazon Web Services or AWS. And since we've installed Chromium, it's provided by Canonical themselves. So that's something you can look at, make sure if it's the right version, so you don't get any sort of a malicious version of the app. Now the next section that I have here are mostly code and programming related things, so I'll just mention what these are and then install them. So first we have VS Code. Now VS Code is a text editor that you have seen me use in a lot of my videos, especially my tutorials on programming. It's a really powerful editor, it's really extensible, you can write any program with any programming language inside of it, and you can turn it into a sort of an IDE, but not quite. There are some limitations, but it's a really powerful piece of software. Now Eclipse, on the other hand, is something you can call an IDE, or an integrated development environment. As the name suggests, it's an environment where you can develop apps that are integrated for a certain system. So you can make applications for Linux, you can write programs for Windows, or use different languages or even frameworks. IDEs make this somewhat simple, or a bit more simpler, if you want to say it like that. In other words, it's a really neat thing to have because you're able to pretty much install any IDE and work in any programming language or any framework you want. The only thing you need is the right set of tools. Android Studio is another IDE. As the name suggests, it's used for working with Android applications specifically, or even with the Android API. Again, I don't have much experience with it, I'm just showing you how you can install these. Next up we have JetBrains set of IDEs. Now if you don't know what JetBrains is, it's a company that provides IDEs, or integrated development environments, for various programming languages like Python, PHP, JavaScript and Ruby, which are the ones I have here listed over here, so we're going to install those. Alright, so next up is installing Spotify. Now if you ever experienced like working on like sort of a project or something, you know it's better with having some sort of music in the background. You know, it helps you concentrate a bit more on your work and you get a bit more focused. So the way you install that is by doing sudo apt-install Spotify --classic, and that's how you install Spotify. Now with that, I'll end it here. I'll let it install the final one. One thing I want to mention is that you might want to reboot after this, but make sure that you have all your updates installed and everything, and then reboot. And all that's left to do for you to do at home is install any sort of software you want, for example Steam or LibreOffice or something like that, and install some games, customize your desktop environment a little, which is what I'm definitely going to do. And yeah, that's pretty much all there's to it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and I will see all of you beautiful people next time.